Welcome to today's episode of the Everyday Leader podcast. We're super excited to bring to you our close friend, the coach's coach and creator of the Culture of Champions, Josh Tilley. He is an educator, an investor, an entrepreneur, and more importantly, he's creating a culture of champions for the youth of today. We're going to dive into where this idea came from, the lessons he's learned along the way, and some great lessons about leadership.
Welcome to the Everyday Leader podcast. Leadership is a choice. Join me, Matt, and my co-hosts Drew and Tate each episode as we break down how to lead powerfully in your family, team, and organization.
Welcome to today's episode of the Everyday Leader podcast. Myself, Matt, and Tate, we're super excited to be joined by our good friend, Josh Tilley, the coach's coach. He's coming off an incredible event he just threw called the Culture of Champions. We're excited to bring him in today and talk about his experiences around leadership, his experiences with this event he's done, his experiences in being an entrepreneur, and just how he shows up for people every day. So welcome, Josh.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be invited onto the Everyday Leader. I'll just say this too. You three are some of the people that are exactly the right people doing what you're doing. I've observed all three of you be leaders in your communities, in my life, and anyway, I just respect the heck out of all three of you guys and really grateful that you're doing this. I think more people need to be focused on their leadership in whatever capacity that means in their community, church, school, family, business. Like, we need better leaders. And so thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason you're on the show today, Josh. And so, I know I'm personally excited to hear more about your story, the insight, kind of what's led you to where you are today. So
Thanks, Tate.
Well, could you share, Josh, with our listener, tell them a little bit about the Culture of Champions and what you just got done doing this last couple of weeks?
Yeah, so I threw an event for youth. My passion is to lead youth and help them become who they don't realize they can become. And the way that I'm doing that is through events. Thus far, it's been through events. So I recognize I have about 15 years of teaching youth, and if it's not relevant, if it's not current, if it's not cool, kids don't care at all. So I wanted to take all this information and knowledge that I have gained through sports and leadership myself and package it in a way that youth would want to listen. And so my idea was celebrities and professional athletes. So just started reaching out, knocking on doors, sending messages, calling people, just Instagram spamming people, seeing who I could get. And it's been pretty cool, the doors that were opened. And this last event had two silver medalists in the Olympics speak. I had someone who's in the Speaker Hall of Fame, top 10 motivational speakers in the world. I had a wrestler who's a high school, national, and world champion wrestler. I had a Heisman Trophy winner and another Heisman Trophy winner, two-time national champion, Tim Tebow. So anyway, I don't want to just go through, I could go through each name and say how cool each person is, but in general, two Heisman Trophy winners, Olympic medalists, national champions, world champions, Hall of Famers. Like, the lineup was just absolutely crazy. So, and then these guys taught the youth, how do you be a champion in every area of your life? How do you remove all distractions? How do you remove or step over all limitations and be a champion, whether that's in your sport or whatever else? And each of them had to overcome pretty incredible odds and pretty incredible difficulties, which I'm learning that's the secret to be a true leader and champion. Is all you do is overcome everything that gets put in your way. And so anyway, that's what we just ran, and it was phenomenal. It was incredible.
Yeah, I've had a front row seat to a lot of this, and for our listener, Josh and I are actually business partners in real estate and have been friends for a long time. So it's kind of been awesome to see you put this together. And I've seen you nights where you're stressed out to the max, and nights where you're excited for what you're doing. And yeah, could you share a little bit about like the journey to set this up and like what you've learned in throwing a huge event like this and how that's like stretched you?
Do you want that to be
Oh,
the
yeah.
last question you ask? Because I could go off for you on that one. The journey, I'll be brief. The journey is much harder than I thought. I had to leverage much more than I thought. The emotional toll was much greater than I thought. And the payout and the benefit and the success was also much greater than I thought. So I think that's also part of the entrepreneurial journey is people don't realize how much it actually takes. And we look at people who are being successful and we think they caught a lucky break, or we think like, oh, they had that connection or they had that in and that's why they were able to do it. Or even sometimes when people have really, really difficult things placed on them and they overcome it, we almost think like, oh, well, if I was a double amputee, I could be a great speaker too, because I would just tell my story or some other, like we come up with these dumb excuses of why we can't do things. And they're just lies. It's just rational lies. So my journey was decide what I want to do and then just figure out a way to do it. And what that took was leveraging a lot of debt. Pretty much the life that me and my wife built the last 15 years, I leveraged every dollar of it to put this event on. As you can imagine, with a lineup of speakers, like I mentioned, it took a lot of money. The first one I did was about $170,000 with 0 sponsors lined up. So I personally funded it by leveraging debt and equity in my home and credit cards and all kinds of stuff. And the pressure that put me in was scary. And it was awesome. What it caused me to become, that's the result that I'm seeing now is I'm much more qualified of a man to do whatever is required. There's nothing right now that I'm scared of to tackle. Everything could hit the fan today, and I am worthy and qualified and capable to create success out of anything, and I will do that. So I think that's the whole journey. What that has taught me is all I need is an insane belief in myself and then just keep going no matter what.
Yeah, that's so good, Josh. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I know would be super helpful that a lot of us deal with is how do we choose and decide what that thing is that we're going to go all in on? Like, I think a lot of us have a lot of ideas. We have a lot of options, especially people that are more inherently like believing. They see that a lot of things are possible to pursue. Can you walk us through that? Like, what was that like? What led you to realize, understand, and determine like, this is what I am going to choose and this is what I'm going to decide? What did that look like?
If it's all right, I'll just walk you through the framework that I stole to figure that out for myself. I have my own framework now for Culture of Champions, but before that, what I used to figure out what to go all in on was the Japanese secret, the Ikigai, the diagram thing with the 4 circles. And it's what do you love? So Dan Clark, he talks a lot about, he's that one I mentioned that with he's in the Speaker Hall of Fame. He says, what would you be willing to travel and do for $0? Like, what would make you excited to go do it and to travel a long distance, to leave family and go do it, and you would be excited to go do it and get paid 0? So what do you love? Second thing is what does the world need? What is something that is an actual lack that you see in the world, like a lack of leadership in the home or in business? Like, what is the lack? Another one is what can you be paid for? What are people willing to give money to answer that lack or that need? And then what are you good at? which that's a huge one. You have to be good at it. You can acquire that skill, but you've got to be good at it. So if you match up those 4 areas, that very, very center is called the Ikigai, and that's your true life's purpose. If you can act and live inside the Ikigai, then you're going to be successful, happy, fulfilled, and things will be great. So as I went through, what do I want to do with what I have? I went through that process. And I think whatever you choose, there will be bigger limitations for you in one of those areas. So for example, for me, it's what can you be paid for? Asking for money basically to train youth, but the youth don't have the money to give it. It's the parents that have the money. So my target audience is not my target market. So that's an area that I'm like wrestling with, is how do I get paid for these things? But I think just staying in that area of those 4 things, you'll be hitting on it. You'll figure it out. And that might mean you got to leave your job. It might mean you got to try something new. It might mean that you got to go acquire some skills that you didn't have before. So, but that has served me huge, is to focus on those 4 areas.
It's awesome.
So I kind of want to back up a little ways here. You know, we're kind of talking, at least right now, kind of where Josh has been. But my assumption is there's been a lot of building blocks along the way, a lot of stepping stones. I guess let's go back. Like where and when did Josh start to see that, man, there's more. I need more. I'm hungry.
For me, there was an exact moment. I don't have a term for this yet, but I think there are times when opportunity knocks, and when you're ready, you can take those opportunities. I don't believe that those opportunities are scarce, actually. Like, I don't think if you missed out on that opportunity, you just missed it, and now your golden door is gone. I think there are infinite opportunities always knocking, always abounding around you. And when you are prepared, you'll feel it. And then it's up to you to do the work to take advantage of that opportunity. So I think I've had dozens of those. And the one that I recognized was I was at an event in Utah called the Limitless Arena event put on by the Muscle, Keaton Hoskins. And there was a guy speaking, his name's Jim Quick, who's like the brain guru. He had a traumatic brain injury when he was younger and was told he was going to be in special classes his whole life, and overcame all of that to where he's the guy for memory and brain function now. And he said when he was speaking, I didn't even know who he was before I went to this event. He wasn't one that I wanted to hear. But as I was sitting there up in this upper cheap seats, he said, there is a version of you that's patiently waiting. And for whatever reason, when he said that, my heart wanted to just explode out of my chest. I have no idea why. It was that moment that just grabbed me. And I wrote in my journal that I had ready to go, like, this is God speaking to me right now. And I had no idea what it meant. I just knew there was a version of me patiently waiting. And I actually, sometimes when you go to those big events, it's like rah, rah, and you get all excited, and then you do something for a few days and you get burned out, and then it's like it never happened. I strategically set in that space without any action for 3 days. I just like sat in it. Why did I feel that? And if that's actually true, what will be different? I kind of sat in like the darkness of it for a minute. I didn't even allow it to like motivate me, like, oh, here we go, let's go do something. I just sat in. There's a version of me that's patiently waiting. That means I am vastly underperforming or something. And I just sat in it. So made some commitments out of those 3 days that I was going to be a greater version of myself. And it started with health, and then started leading into other things. And as that ball started going, more doors and opportunities opened, and I just started stepping through those doors. It actually, and one of the first things, it was with Matt. This is still like, I'm pretty new to all the language of possibility and freedom and all these things. And we were talking about the story of Pima basketball, and how they went from a losing program to the winningest program in all of Arizona, and what principles we implemented in this basketball program. And Matt was like, that story needs to be told everywhere. Where that story must be told. And he was like, Josh, we got to tell that story at the next basketball game. And I'm like, what does that mean? How do we even do that? And he's like, I don't know, just let's do it. So like, I just said, okay. And we talked to the AD, we talked to the coach, we put it out in the community that we were going to have a miracle at the end of this basketball game. And it was so cool. Looking back, it was like so weird how we just made it happen. But like, we just made it happen. Everybody stayed in the gym. And then I told the story of Pima basketball, and Matt told the story of how that's impacting on a bigger scale the Arizona Diamondbacks and others. And it was just like opportunities presented, and we just went and just did it. And that led me into some areas and avenues and people and opportunities. And it's just been a roller coaster of excitement and pain and fun and worry and awesome.
So prior to that event, had you been to events before?
No.
So that was your very, very first event.
That was my first event. Yep. That was the first time where I was like, I knew about the world of personal development and self-development and leadership, but I hadn't really focused on it. I have a business degree from ASU, but I put that on the hold to teach for years and years. And I just focused on teaching and living a pretty small, quiet, I don't know, like staying out of the way for people to analyze me. I just stayed in this pretty quiet little light of helping people where I could. And I was fine with that. So no, that was this whole thing has been a year and a half, maybe 2-year explosion.
How did you end up at that event?
I don't know. I think I saw, so me and the muscle, Keaton, were missionaries together back in 2006. And I saw some of his ads of like flying around on helicopters. And I'm like, what the freak is this guy doing? So I messaged him on Facebook, and I basically said that. I was like, what the freak are you doing? What even is this? And he was just like, come to my event. So I think that's how I ended up going to it.
That is excellent. Josh, real quick, you mentioned a couple times about how you were kind of like living a quiet life out of the spotlight, or not even like attention spotlight, but just to where, kind of more quiet and not drawing any attention to anything. And I will say that experience we had that night at the Pima gym after the basketball game was really interesting. Like, I'll always be grateful for it, mostly because you were involved with it, but also because like it just taught me so much. What can you say about that? Like, my vibe that night was that there was a lot of people in that room who were almost like weirded out, like by what had just been created. Like, couldn't even really reconcile like who are these guys and who do they think they are and why are they doing this? So I know you've been confronted with a lot of that since you decided to, live a little bit different, show up a little bit different, less quiet, more bold. Tell us a little bit about how you've dealt with that, how you've worked through that.
The way that I've dealt with it is actually very simple. I have become so confident in myself that I realize that those other people, it's not like I don't care. I think sometimes people say like, oh, you just get so focused on you that you just don't care what anyone else thinks. I actually do a lot care about what other people think and how I'm impacting other people. So it's more like being so confident in me that my value isn't based on what I think they're thinking about me. And it's realizing that they are the lens that they're seeing me through is their own limiting beliefs and their own self-judgments. And so there's this, I almost want to confront them in those spaces so that they can work on their limiting beliefs that they're creating in their own minds and they're now casting on me, which before I listened or I saw myself through that lens. And now it's like, it's not even a lens I'm not like, I just focus hard on not caring. Like, it's not even the same lens anymore. It's I'm not bothered by the lens and like the things that they're putting themselves through on me, because I'm so confident in what I'm doing and what I believe. That was not, I need to figure out how to word that, because for me, it's really powerful. Like, what if I could like synthesize that? I think that's one of the most powerful things I've learned through this whole journey. I don't know exactly how to say it in a way that's I can give that to someone, but
yeah, well, you said it really well. And here's like the way I hear that, and maybe this would be helpful to you and or to our listener, that it's like the ability to hold both, like this, I am really committed to making a difference, bringing value, impacting people, and my worth and my value is not dependent on what they think about me or their response or their praise or their acceptance. And I think that when we can hold both, like that's a really powerful place to operate from, where we do care, right? We really do care about other people. And we're not attached to what they think or their response or their reaction, because we know who we are. And that keeps us just showing up, caring.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think there's still another piece of it, at least for me, where I don't know what it is, but it's almost like I care more about them in challenging their beliefs and just there's no tie from their belief to me anymore. Not like I had to like resist it. It's like it's not even there anymore. I don't even have to try to resist that. It's not there. Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's all there. It's what we're saying.
Detached. Yeah, it like you're detached from it, so it's not even there. Yeah,
it's funny. I know for me personally, even prior to really getting involved and intentional about what we're doing here, I'd read a book or something and I'd immediately want to go out and share like, hey, guess what I learned? And it was always amazing that people were like, oh yeah, whatever, believe what you want, or you're crazy or whatever. And so I find it even challenging today, like as I see things differently, accepting that not everybody's going to see it exactly the way I do. And so I hear a bit of that, because I'm the same way. I want to go out and help and share, but you can't control how people receive that. And with that, you being a teacher, do you have any advice or input on, people that are more open or less open, or how do you navigate sharing beliefs?
All of it? Share it all. That's what I've learned, is there's people that have all kinds of thoughts and opinions, but if I feel strong about something, I should share it. And it's crazy too, when I see people sharing, I have this like really intense feeling of gratitude and excitement that they are willing to do it, because I know how hard it is and how much you can get into your own head about what are people going to think, or what's the people in my church going to think, or what are my business people going to think, or what, like you could get so stuck in all of that. And if you take the time to do it, you will. Or you can just say, I know that what I'm doing is valuable, and I post it. And I actually had a huge barrier to this early, like for a long time, because like 7 years ago, I shared something on Facebook. It was about Greg Popovich and Tim Duncan, and it was written by The Onion. And I didn't even realize that it was like satire, that it was making fun of something. And it was like so blatantly positive, but I didn't catch that it was totally making fun of them. And I shared it. And I even put like my own little testimonial of how much I respected Greg Popovich and Tim Duncan because of this post. And like, I had like probably 30 messages of just like, how dumb are you? And I was so embarrassed. I literally didn't post for like 5 years. And then when I got into this new space of just giving and doing, that came back to my mind 1,000 times of, I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to be embarrassed. People are going to judge it. I'm going to say something wrong. I'm going to say something dumb. And I just don't care anymore. It just doesn't matter. Even if I know I said something wrong or different, I just leave it. I don't even care to go in and correct it or tell people like, oh, I'm like, I didn't realize it. I'm like, who cares? Like, just send it, give it, like whatever is good, people will grab, and anything else, they don't care about you enough to think about it anyway.
That is awesome. I'm going to go look up that post now.
Oh, thanks.
Buddy, my mom, when I was a kid, used to always say that. She would say, hey, don't worry about what people think about you, because they don't.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
you know what else I love? there's a guy who is pretty confrontational to me. He's a guy who loves basketball. He's a guy who coaches, and I know him fairly well, and he's pretty negative, like to me, and for some reason making sure people that I know hear about it, and it gets back to me for some reason. But guess who pops up on every single viewed reel I post and every single story I post? Every single thing. His name is right there, right there, right there. So now I'm just grateful. And maybe there'll be something sometime that challenges him enough that he'll become a better leader and more vocal about, because he's a great leader. He's a great guy. He's just super limited in a few things. And I think it could be really powerful for him to step out of that someday.
Do you think there's any truth to, maybe he's seeking some of that? Maybe he is a little bit self-aware subconsciously, and that's where some of that's coming from?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a little bit of that in everybody, and we all express it a little bit differently. But yeah, I think that's definitely a manifestation of his own insecurities and wanting to have more influence.
Josh, something else that I know will be so valuable to anyone listening is you've talked a couple times about challenging people or helping people challenge what they believe to be true that's limiting. And I've seen you do that, and you're very effective at that. And one of the reasons I believe you're so well equipped to do that is because you're so good at building trust with people, and sometimes extremely quickly, and especially with youth. And so what nuggets can you share about that, like about building trust with people and being with people in a way that you can get to the point where they'll listen and they care and they trust you and they feel safe with you? Anything come to your mind that you can share from your experience with youth or otherwise?
I think the two things that come to mind when I'm thinking about trust and developing trust is vulnerability and integrity. And I think both of those, I think vulnerability builds trust or creates trust. And then I think integrity keeps it. And that's occurring to me as I'm saying it right now, which is kind of cool that I'm putting language to that. But I think being vulnerable and people seeing who you really are and knowing that you have your own, and not even doubts or concerns, but just that you're real and you have the same thoughts that they've had. And there's a camaraderie there. There is a trust because you see what their struggle is. So I think that's big. Vulnerability. I think I've learned that from teaching youth. If I'm a normal person doing normal things, then there's a level of respect. There's a level of trust. And then integrity is one that I one of my statements, something that's part of my ethos or my what do you guys call it? Your manifesto, my personal manifesto, or maybe you have your freedom chant now. I don't know what you have, but whatever it is, mine is that I am uncommon integrity. And all of my statements like that go back to an experience or a story. And mine is when I was selling door-to-door sales, and my goal every day was to get 1 to 2 sales. And if I did that the whole summer, I was going to be crazy successful as far as my standards were concerned. And so I had gone 2 days with 0 sales. And the third day, I was just feeling so crappy. I got to get some sales. And in the morning, I went out and I had 2 sales before lunch. And my last door before lunch, there was this old lady. And I lied to her in my pitch in order to close the sale. I lied about the cancellation policy to get the sale. So I had 3 sales before lunch, which on one side I was feeling super excited about. I had 3 sales in one day before lunch. And the other side, I was like, I'm just a dirtbag. I'm just a slimy salesman. I have always said I don't want to be. And so after lunch, I went back to that lady and knocked on her door. And in my mind, I kind of thought I would tell her I was dishonest, and she'd be like, wow, that's so amazing that you came and told me that. It's okay. That's kind of how it played out in my mind. And it did not. She was irate. She was so mad. She screamed all kinds of things at me, pulled out the phone, called 911, called my boss, called everybody, which it was all fine. Nothing happened, but she just caused this big stink. And I remember walking away with those feelings totally swapping, where I was like, dang, I lost that sale, but my integrity was intact and I felt so much more powerful. And then the rest of the day, I went out and had 8 more sales in that same day. So I ended up having 11 sales, which was a industry record as far as we could find, even outside of our own company that had 7 branches out in the United States. It was an industry record for that summer. And I remember walking away, and I have a strong relationship and belief in God. And I remember this feeling and this thought was, if you take care of me, like if you have integrity, I will take care of you. Like, look what I just did for you today. And I think even though I believe in God, I think it's that's a universal principle. I don't think you have to believe in God to have that, what I just said, be true. That when you have integrity and you live in integrity, things happen that are sucked into your sphere because you are showing your worthiness and showing your ability to do good with good. So anyway, that has always been one of my very, very strong principles that I want to live by, is uncommon integrity. And there's been lots of opportunities to exercise that, as you can imagine, in business. There's lots of areas where you can just a little bit, without even being super dishonest, but I want to be uncommon integrity.
That's amazing. I love that. Vulnerability builds the bridge, and keeping your word is the integrity that keeps it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Josh, do you have any examples of those that have been leaders to you up to this point that have helped you maybe take some of the steps forward that you wouldn't have taken without those leaders in your life?
Yeah. And the cool thing is I love to give credit to those people. And for those listening, you don't need those people. Like, they're helpful and they're valuable, but the magic has to come from you. It can't come from anyone else. So I have paid mentors. I have awesome partners that have helped me. Drew, as a real estate partner, has been huge in like giving belief to me, in me, encouraging me, helping me when I come and say, like, dude, I just leveraged freaking everything. He's not like, are you dumb? Why would you do that? Is your family okay? Is your family safe? He's like, yeah, let's go. It's like, there's just excitement there. So Drew's been a huge, huge part of that. There's been other people that were like moments when I was pushing and working, somebody said something, or like that experience I had with you, Matt, where it was just like, you got this, do it. Let's get on that stage. That might have been one of the scaredest, the most fearful I've ever been, because it was my first time projecting myself onto a stage, not being asked to speak. I pushed it. I mean, you pushed it and we pushed it. And it was only people that knew me, knew who I was, have watched me the last 10 years. Like, it was the scariest speech I've ever given. Even though since then, I've been in front of way more people, way bigger things, done interviews with Taysom Hill and Tim Tebow, like done awesome things. Nothing compared with how scared I was from you pushing me to jump off that ledge at the beginning. And then the other thing that's really cool is as you start to do stuff and you can see that what you're doing is inspiring others, that's been huge too. I remember when I went to buy a cow from Tate Hoisington, who I didn't know who this guy was, except that he has really nice cows and he's part of a big business and he's kind of a baller. And even though he's a cowboy, he's wearing hay dudes out in this manure pile. And I was like, this guy's so freaking cool. And like would kind of see him in the community and recognize them as like a baller, as a leader. And then when he saw me doing all the stuff I was doing with Culture Champions, for someone who I respected to come and say, dude, what you're doing is awesome. And I respect you. And now looking at this video, like that guy's wearing my hat, Culture Champions hat. That's freaking so dope. And it's dope because anyone can do it. Like, just decide what it is you want to do and just go, and you'll be blown away on how you inspire others, inspire other yous. And this sounds really, really really prideful and kind of conceited, but I've learned that there's a truth in it. Like, you have to be your own hero too. Like, you have to love yourself and who you are, because when you're stuck in insecurities, you won't do anything. You're just surviving. You can't do jack. So anyway, that was kind of I don't know that I gave you a great answer to that question, but there's been a lot of people. 3 of them are on this call, and there's a couple others that I could name too that have been very helpful in this journey.
Well, that's not what I was asking for, and thank you for that, Josh.
Drew was just digging for that response.
I will say this, like, here's one thing that I've seen that's just incredible about you, Josh, and we, almost to contradict what you said, we've joked a lot about our partnership being good because you're the one that's like, let's go, jump right in, take action. And I'm like, hold on, let's analyze, let's stop, let's make sure. So I just love that about you. Like, I've seen it just, we bought some apartments together, and the next thing I know, you're like, I'm buying a duplex. Like, weeks after, I'm like, what? Like, have you checked? Are you sure? And you're like going again. And it's like, just with Culture of Champions, that you dove into that. I mean, there's, and I don't know if you want to share some things here around this. There's so many miracles that, like, that whole thing could have fallen apart the first event. And I just think it's incredible, like, how you were able to just continually to take action, even when it was like, you could have just buried your head in the sand and given up on the whole thing. I don't know if you want to share any of those experiences, but I think it'd be really powerful for people just to hear. Like, what I think makes you a leader, Josh, is just your willingness to just decide and move. Like, when you decide, you move forward. And there's so many people out there that just, and I've been guilty of this myself, where I just get caught up in indecision and thinking about it and trying to decide and overanalyzing. And you've just been such a great, I think, to all of us, a great example of being a leader by just going out and doing.
I think there's been probably 10 times where I thought it could have been a lesser version of me would have taken it as a sign that it wasn't meant to be, or that I could have just stopped and it would have been easier to just stop. Most of those have been financial. Probably the first biggest one was when I needed, how much did I need? I think I needed $30,000 in like 24 hours. And someone had promised me a sponsorship that was going to pay for that. And the day before it was due, told me they could no longer do the sponsorship. And if I didn't pay it within 24 hours, I was going to lose Tim Tebow, which 90% of the people who were coming to the event were coming because it was Tim Tebow. And I remember thinking, who do I have to be to find $30,000 in the next 24 hours? Which was such a wild thought. Like, 6 months before that, if you said you need to come up with $200, I would have had a freak out. Like, I don't know how I would even have done that. So, I don't know how this happens, but when you have ridiculous commitment to something, so far, every time a person or a thing has landed to make it work, it's magic. It is weird. I don't know how it happens, why it happens, but every single time. And when I'm in it, like when I've hit the roadblock and the solution hasn't presented itself yet, it's not like, it's still terrifying. It's still scary, and it's still really hard. There's this, the Mars rover is, when it goes to Mars, it has to go from 46,000 miles per hour to landing softly without damaging anything in 7 seconds. And no, 7 minutes. And it takes 12 minutes for a message to get from the rover back to NASA. So by the time that the rover is either like obliterated or safe, NASA has no idea. Because by the time the message gets to them, it's already been saved for 12 minutes or already exploded for 12 minutes. So the 7 minutes from 46,000 to 0 is called the 7 minutes of terror. And when I first learned about that, I was like, dude, I experienced the 7 minutes of terror all the time. And the other thing that's really cool is the name of that rover is called Perseverance. That's the name of the Mars rover that has to do that. So that was a little off track, but as I've launched into the 7 minutes of terror, like I have 24 hours to find $30,000 or else the whole thing goes up in flames. It was so crazy that within probably 10 hours, I had 3 people willing to give it. And I was like, how did that even happen? I don't even know how that happened. It was just, maybe call this guy, maybe call that guy. That guy has an idea of maybe try this other guy. So one guy was like, hey, I'll just give you a hard money loan for 30 grand. You can pay me back when the event is over. And I was like, oh, solution. And then right after that, another guy called me, or he was like, hey, but call this guy. He might have a better offer. So I called this other guy and he's like, hey, I love what you're doing. I think it's really great. I'm going to be out of town. I would love to give you the money. Call my business partners. I call the business partners. They're like, that's really cool. And we'll give you a better percent. Then this first guy will still just basically give you a hard money loan, but we'll give. So I had it 2 times if I needed it. And then right after that, one of the sponsors who I'd been working on, and like a $10,000 sponsor, called me and he's like, hey, what would it take to be your title sponsor, your main title sponsor? And I was like, $30,000. And he was like, sweet. And he wired it to me right then. It was crazy. So that was the biggest example of it. But I've had things like that. Even this last event, when 12 days before the event, my venue canceled for bull crap reasons. Like, I still don't know the bottom of what happened, but we had a contract. We had discussed for months, and they basically gave me some dumb answer. And they said, there's no solution. I went and found them a solution and said, hey, here's your solution. It can still go. It can still work. And they just never replied. I called, I emailed, I texted, everything. And they just quit responding altogether 12 days before the event. And I had a friend who I was telling, he was like, do you think it'd be better maybe if you just canceled it? Like, do you think, and in my back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, it'd be freaking way easier to just cancel it. This whole thing would be easier if I just canceled it, but I'm not going to do that. So I got in contact with somebody else who knew somebody else. And then it ended up being the district AD for all of Queen Creek, who's a huge Tim Tebow fan, was like, hey, we want to do it at one of our schools. What would it take? They rolled out the red carpet. They ended up having all these clubs, set up chairs. They did 10 times more than the previous school. And it was better. So not only have things worked out, every time I've hit a snag and decided to just persevere anyway, it's ended up being better. Every single one of those things. So I almost like have this weird giddiness when something goes horribly wrong, because I'm like, oh baby, what miracle are we going to pull out now?
That's so awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks for sharing that, Josh. I think so many could be served by hearing some of those examples. What would you, let's say somebody's not throwing an event that costs tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, but like, what advice would you give to someone who's new to leadership, new to maybe the entrepreneur journey, that's really just looking to make a difference in their life and just maybe feels like they don't know what to do or they don't know where to go next?
Get around people, physically, proximity, and with books. Get around people who are doing big things. Like, get your mind in a space of creation and abundance, and your calling will start to manifest itself. I really, really believe that. But you have to do the work to get into those circles, and it costs money. I used to hear the word mentorship, and I thought like, oh, I wish I knew someone who would mentor me. And I even asked the real estate guy early on in my real estate journey, like, will you mentor me? And he was like, well, if you want to ask me questions, you can. I didn't realize the way mentorship works is you just pay a lot of money to someone who's already done what you want to do. And that's what mentoring is. Like, you just have to pony up and pay people. And it's really painful, and it's really, really worth it. So go to the dinners, go to the lunches, get in the everyday leader, get into the groups. What is your guys' group called? It's the climb. The climb. Get in the climb. Get in with a group of people who are doing things that inspire you. And it's the whole, like, you've heard it a million times, especially if you started getting into business or leadership, the 5 people principle, who, like, that is so true. The 5 people you spend the most time with, which I've learned can be books. It doesn't have to be proximity. You don't have to ditch your community or your family. You can get diving deep into books, especially maybe a certain person who you respect a ton. That can be your mentor. And you just read and read and read and read and read, and you'll start having thoughts and ideas and impressions, and then you start to express those and talk about them, and then you'll get some hate for them, but others will build you. And then you get into a group where they're also doing things like that, like the climb, and like, just go. Anything you're scared about and you feel like maybe you should do it, just do it. Just go and do it. I just signed up for an 8-week course with the Navy SEAL helicopter pilot, and I'm not exactly all sure what it's going to do. I did a thing a little while ago, a 24-hour thing with him, and I just started feeling the other day like, my event just ended. What's going to help me for the next 8 weeks? Because I still have a natural man tendency to take a breath. Like, okay, I leveraged all that. It's over. I don't have something hanging over my head. Let's just chill a little bit. And I recognized that in myself, and I thought, I got to do something. Like, what's the thing I'm going to do to level up? So I signed up, and the first thing he said was, go to a gym, have a journal, and like a gym where you can running shoes and a journal, and it's going to be an hour Zoom call, and just be ready to go to work. And now it's like, that's scary. And I'm so excited about it. I don't even care that it's scary. I know it's going to put me to a place that's better and more than I've ever been. So I'm all in on paying money to level yourself up.
It's awesome.
Hey, real quick for our listeners, I want to point out, when we look and we're putting the idea that we can't go out and do these things, and then just to paint Josh in the right picture. Josh, for the last 15 years, what has been your career?
Seminary teaching youth religion at a teacher's salary.
So you got into real estate, hired coaches, put on these big events on a teacher salary.
Yeah.
So guys, this is possible. And then that's what I want to illustrate. What Josh is doing is incredible. But he didn't start with this huge leg up or anything. He built it. I think it's incredible. Josh, how do you want to be remembered?
That I created a culture of champions.
I love it.
If you're listening, he tilted his head down so you could see his Culture of Champions hat better. For those that may not be watching this on YouTube. That's awesome.
Well, Josh, thanks so much, man. It's been incredible. Appreciate you taking the time to share. And yeah, selfishly, I'm just stoked to be a little tiny part of your journey and count you as a very close friend. And yeah, appreciate you taking the time to come on today.
I'll just say this too, which you definitely didn't ask for me to say this, but these 3, I've already mentioned I'm blessed to know them, but I'd like to put on the event that I put on took money. It took dollars. And every single one of these 3 people put their own money into sponsoring youth to come to the Culture of Champions event. Like, these are the type of people that aren't just talking heads trying to tell you what to do with your life. Like, these are people who actually put their own money on the line to support a friend, to support another person in the community trying to do something important and big. So I just want to not only say thank you personally, but also just honor you for putting your resources into things that you know will help people and create better leaders.
Of course, our pleasure.
I can certainly say, for me personally, what you're doing, what you've done is inspiring. I mean, for a number of reasons. So,
Well, and you've created something bigger than you too, Josh. So I think it's easy for us to be a part of the vision and join in when yes, we are supporting you, and it's like we're also supporting something bigger than you too.
Yeah.
And so it's fun to be a part of that. So, well, Josh, if our listeners want to connect with you, if they want to hear about the next events, if they have youth that they want to be blessed by what you teach in your message, like where can they go?
Instagram is the easiest way to do that. It's just the coach's coach. And there's an underscore between those three words. So the _coaches _coach. And yeah, I do youth training. I'm doing more events. I'm doing a lot of stuff, but I'm pretty current on Instagram.
Okay, well, you heard the man. Go do the thing.
That's right.
Don't give up. Embrace the
Get him to
7 minutes
follow.
of terror. I'm sitting here. I can't wait for my next 7 minutes of terror. I'm going to go create it tonight, I think.
It's so crazy. It's seriously so crazy because when I was in the 7 minutes of terror, I couldn't wait for it to be over. And as soon as it was over and I was safe landing, I thought, this is danger. This is more dangerous than the 7 minutes of terror. And I must create the next 7 minutes of terror if I want to continue to progress.
Yeah. Got to keep climbing.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, hey, appreciate you joining us today. And to our listener, today's the day.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us on the Everyday Leader podcast. If you're ready to take your leadership journey even further, subscribe to our weekly newsletter for more insights and practical tips. And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram to stay a part of our growing community. Just follow the links in the show notes. If this episode impacted you, please help us spread the word and share the link with a friend from wherever you're listening.